Hello and welcome. Today we've got Nickita Starck and we are going to be discussing pathologized birth. Now, just before we begin, you can subscribe to our Telegram channels and to nicholasveniamin.com for my free email updates. And if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube, I will leave the link below in the description for the full interview. Unless, of course, myself and Nickita can choose our words wisely. Nickita, thank you for joining me. How are you and what have you been up to?
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Nicholas. It's an honour to be here. I have been, well, I haven't stopped. I made a company called When Push Comes to Shove because I can see that the people are desperate for an alternative birthing system. I don't want to call it a system because, it's not really my thing. It's just an alternative way to give birth and understand your rights in childbirth, understand birth physiology. And I train birth keepers. So I train people that want to become natural birth practitioners in natural childbirth physiology. I train people in human rights, so they know that they can decline various interventions, etc., etc. And I have just started this campaign called the Midwife Lifeboat. It's to give a lifeline to any NHS staff that are going to potentially lose their job due to the current mandate. And if they want to work outside the system, we're offering them a lifeline. But you can go to my website, whenpushcomestosshove.co.uk, and click on Midwife Lifeboat and read all about it. And then if you want to do a course in birth physiology yourself or become a doula or a birth keeper, we're here to do that as well. So we're just spreading the word of autonomy and informed consent in childbirth. And we want to make sure women are empowered rather than handing their birth over to the system. So
explain to me how you would give birth, help someone give birth. And then speak to me through the process and then compare that to what we're used to in the current matrix, if you like. I like to avoid the word system, but matrix, go on.
Okay, so if you are going through the mainstream system, matrix, what you want to call it, in this country, certainly, you do not have continuity of carer. So you don't see the same midwife throughout unless you're lucky enough to live in an area with case-loading midwives, but that's far few and in between. You have no idea who's going to attend your birth. You are not educated in physiology in childbirth. So it's become a very over-medicalized, pathologized practice when it's not. And I can't stress this enough. Childbirth is a natural process that will occasionally need medical intervention, not a medical procedure that happens naturally if you're lucky. I can't stress that enough. Now, the NHS at the moment have a C-section rate of approaching 35%, some hospitals 50%. That is not good enough. And I'll explain why later. My C-section rate is 3%. So that just goes to show there's nothing wrong with the body of a woman in 2021. We're born to do this. Now, some people will say, well, what's wrong with having a medicalised birth? This is where, we will talk to you about this in our courses, etc. But you have to understand, if you interfere in a physiological process, there are going to be complications. It's going to be a domino effect, intervention after intervention. And thousands of women are entering the system perfectly healthy and then leaving disempowered, downtrodden, and traumatized, scarred emotionally and physically. And it's not necessary. The implications for these trauma births are huge. Children have a compromised microbiome due to how they've been delivered, which can cause asthma, eczema, allergies, because they're not informed. They haven't been given information to make an informed decision. Whereas if someone comes to When Push Comes to Shove, we will find you a birth keeper. We do not practice anything clinical because it's not necessary. If you need clinical intervention, chances are you need to be in hospital anyway. So we are there as a wise presence that are experts in physiological birth. We're there to support you emotionally and practically. We go through your entire pregnancy with you, so you form a bond with whoever's attending you. They're at the whole birth and then postnatally as well. So you're far more likely to have the birth that you actually want.
Okay, now can you go through some examples? For an example, when you say clinically, or medically. Can you give some examples of what that might include in respect to equipment and also, drugs?
Sure. So I'll give you an example of a very typical birth in the mainstream. So women are told that when they are overdue, and I say overdue in inverted commas because it's utter nonsense. I mean, 40 weeks was coined by a German obstetrician in the 1800s, and he based his calculations on the lunar calendar, and we still use it today. So some women, it's normal to go to 44, even 45 weeks, but you never see that because they don't let you. Anyway, so they'll say you have to come in for an induction. People don't know they can decline that, or it's necessary to decline that. So they go in and they often end up using a drug called syntocinon. And syntocinon is a synthetic form of oxytocin, which is your natural hormone that gets you into labor. It's a love cocktail. It makes you feel, safe. It makes you feel that you can get through birth, and it's your body's natural painkiller as well. But syntocinon does not work naturally. It doesn't go to your brain. You don't go into that beautiful birth bubble. It makes your contractions stronger, longer, harder together and really close together. So subsequently, you're in a lot of pain. You ask for an epidural. The epidural slows down your labor because it renders you on your back. You can't move around like you should be in childbirth and using gravity on your side. So then they give you more Synto and then up the epidural. And then what happens is a cascade of intervention because you're not feeling the extra pain of the Synto because you've got an epidural. It's actually compromising oxygen flow to the placenta because of the extra strength of the contractions. Baby goes into distress. Baby needs an emergency cesarean to be born or an instrumental delivery. And they want you to thank them for saving a baby for a cascade of intervention that they started in the first place. So that is a very typical birth, and it's traumatizing. People think that childbirth is just ridiculously painful. And yeah, of course it can be, but there are so many variations and factors that will influence how much pain you're going to experience. I personally had a pain-free birth last year, but that wasn't the case with my first because I had a very medical birth and I didn't know what I know now. If someone comes to us and says, oh, they've told me I need to be induced, we don't tell them no because we don't tell them what to do. We give them information so they can make an informed decision. So we will give them evidence-based information, say, well, this is the evidence that suggests that your placenta will work perfectly fine after 41 weeks. We send them to various different sources. And if they want to give birth at home when they are overdue, that's fine. And 9 times out of 10, we're not going to experience any problems. I mean, I know that sometimes birth will obviously go wrong and we don't know why, but it's such a small percentage. Even the World Health Organization says if a hospital's C-section rate exceeds 10%, they're all unnecessary. And
right.
the way babies are born is important. I mean, one, for the mother, because the experience is sacred. And if they get birth wrong, they blame themselves, they think they're inadequate. It can have a medical impact on a child, but, I think that's kind of the plan. It's customers for life if people are born unwell, right?
Mm-hmm. So how long has this mainstream process of giving birth, the pathologized birth, has been going for now? How many years would you say that's been going for?
I would say soon after the NHS popped up, after the Second World War. Because what they were doing before, everyone gave birth at home. And then it became like almost a status symbol to give birth in hospital. I'm doing this, I've got a holiday away from the rest of the family. That, it was a status symbol. But instead of just bringing women in who are very high risk to hospital, they started bringing everyone into hospital to give birth. And they've now realised that's a mistake. They know statistically home birth is safer, even with high risk. If you look at Dr. Sarah Wickham's website, she cites lots of studies that indicate that home birth is safer.
We won't use a 3-letter agency. We'll call it the healthcare system for censorship reasons, unfortunately. But what I would like to ask is, why do you think, when we consider the financial aspect of it, our DNA aspect of it, the trauma that has the effect on us. Why do you think that they like this process, the pathologized birth? Why do you think the healthcare system likes that process and wants to get away from the birth that you're advocating, the natural birth?
I think money. One is money. If you look at the mainstream healthcare service, they are actually paid. And if anyone wants to know more detail, please get in contact. But they are paid by a certain company, just shy of £4,000 for every emergency cesarean section they do.
Is that is that the WHO?
No, I don't know if I can say it on camera.
Okay, no, leave it. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, they are paid money for that. And there's money, obviously, in big pharma with the drugs they use. There's a certain element of like a patriarchal problem. So like men taking over women's bodies as obstetricians. There's a massive emotional element here where women feel, especially abused women who feel that they're being raped during birth because of the intrusive vaginal exams, which for the most part are unnecessary. And I still can't believe that vaginal exams are given as like a standard practice as soon as you walk into a hospital. That's so invasive and unnecessary. And I wish women understood that they have just as much right to do it to their midwife as their midwife does to them. They don't have to say yes. And in fact, you can close your cervix back up. It can cause fear. And I think there is an agenda somewhere down the line, and it's evolved as we've gone on. And I think, doctors are only as good as the doctor that trained them, et cetera, et cetera. Doctors aren't taught physiological birth at all. They're there for when things go wrong. And now it seems to be happening with midwives. When midwives were the epitome of normal birth, it's pathologized there as well. So they don't learn, like at med school, you won't learn about birth physiology at all. If you had a room of 100 obstetricians and asked them to put their hand up if they've seen a natural birth, and when I say natural, I mean at home, uninterrupted, no vaginal exams, like that, not one would put their hand up and say, yes, I've seen it.
Okay, now there's got to be mothers out here there listening right now in the viewers, and there has to be a small percentage who may be pregnant. What's your advice to them? They want to have a natural birth. They want to have the best birth for their baby and for themselves. What do you advise them?
I would suggest they go to whenpushcomestosshove.co.uk and educate. If you have knowledge, it's obviously power. And the more you understand about the natural process of birth, the less fear you're going to have. Fear is not conducive to a natural birth that most people want. It will stop all your hormones. Your body will go, it's not safe to give birth. And all the oxygenated blood you need for your uterus will go to your arms and legs ready to fight or fly.
Okay.
So you must educate yourself.
Let's talk about what happens at this time with the crisis, the current crisis. And you've said to me before we started this interview that if the patient hasn't taken the liquid, that they're treated differently, and they take their child their baby is taken away. You're saying before, and for 10 days or something away from the mother. Do you want to explain that and just choose your words wisely, please, Nickita?
Sure. Some reports have come to me that people are saying, I have been told by a healthcare system that if I don't have this intervention and this intervention, that their babies will be taken away for 10 days after birth because they will be treated as infection suspicious, shall we say?
Yeah, perfect.
They can't do that under the NHS constitution. There's not been one report, there has been several reports, and luckily we can help them with that. We write to the said establishment. We quote laws because we work with a human rights expert, and we know how to help people in that sense. They can't do that. And if you are unwell, you obviously need to be in a hospital. If you are not unwell, then stay at home if that's what you want to do. I mean, more to the point, you should give birth wherever you feel safe. If you do not feel safe at home, then don't do it. It's not conducive to the birth that you'll want. But we can help you navigate this system. We've now got nearly 60 birth keepers in 5 different countries. We're becoming a global organization. So we can engage people for you to help you either navigate the system or leave it entirely. No one has to inform the organization about their pregnancy and birth. No one. It's an optional service. And if you're ready to explore the natural path, definitely come to us. And furthermore, we understand that not everyone can afford private practice like this. So what I've done is I've set up an access fund. So any birth worker that works with me, every time we get them a job, they donate 10% of their fee to the access funds. So that way we can provide low-income families with free care. Because otherwise it just wouldn't work. We don't want people to think, oh, it's just for rich. That's not the case at all.
Well, Nickita Starck, you're doing an amazing job. I'd happily leave the link below in the description so that, the viewers can ask questions, they can educate themselves, and which will help them navigate the decision that they want to make. And of course, understand that's what you're advocating here. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to the viewers before we finish?
I'd love to. If anyone is generous enough to make a small donation to the Access Fund, we greatly appreciate it. And I'm also a singer-songwriter, and I wrote a song called Breathe Again. You can find it on YouTube, and maybe Nicholas will be kind enough to leave it in the description. It's to share awareness about informed consent and autonomy in childbirth. The video has midwives singing along to the chorus, beautiful footage of women who have just given birth. And it's just to spread awareness of when push comes to shove and how we can help you.
I would love to leave the links below. Thank you very much, Nickita, and we'll speak very soon. God bless you.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Bye-bye.